This video was, at one point, one of the most watched on another channel I created as an experiment. A space to test formats, tone, and reach. But this channel here is something else. It grows slowly but steadily and, more importantly, with a clear sense of its own place in today's cultural atmosphere. Lately, though, a pattern has emerged. Sudden visits from people caught in what seems like a collective panic. They show up shouting things like, "AI slop," as if they've uncovered some deep scandal, when really, they're just reacting to their own fear.
So now and then, at the beginning of a video, I might say a few words about that. Not out of bitterness, but because it marks a phase, a moment of friction, of visibility that says something real about this channel. The discomfort it causes, the reactions it triggers are signs that it's doing something effective.
They're part of its algorithmic memory, part of the history it's beginning to accumulate. Moments of tension that sharpen its sense of self, that force a kind of self-awareness, both for the channel and for those engaging with it. And I say this with a certain satisfaction because, like all moral panics, this one will burn out quickly. And as always, attempts to dismiss or suppress only end up drawing more attention. Just like cinema, photography, and every other form of remix and remake before it, this, too, is part of the human loop, a cycle of self-reference and reinvention. It won't be any different this time, and it will be inevitable. To those viewers, thank you. To the rest, stay with me. You know you're part of a philosophical ecosystem we're building together, and in here, ideas catch fire every single day. Let's begin.
This is the title, Entropy, Meaning, and the Spreadsheet of History, Hegel Against the Algorithm. Let's start with a claim, one you've probably heard before, dressed up in machine learning talk, or murmured by someone who just got back from an AI conference. With enough time, entropy, and economic pressure, humans and machines, and maybe parrots, will converge in meaning. We'll all understand each other eventually. Mutual intelligibility is just a matter of training sets and patience. Now let's be fair. This idea isn't pure techno-utopian fluff. It has serious intellectual ancestors. In cognitive science, thinkers like Daniel Dennett and Andy Clark have developed models of mind based on predictive processing, optimization, and the minimization of surprise. In these views, cognition is, at bottom, computation, and minds, whether human, animal, or artificial, run on comparable principles. From evolutionary theory, Donald T. Campbell's evolutionary epistemology, and before him, Herbert Spencer's social Darwinism, suggests that cultural and cognitive convergence might be natural outcomes of adaptive selection. Different minds, under shared pressures, evolve toward shared structures of sense. In short, from a certain naturalistic or functionalist lens, the idea that meaning converges through optimization isn't outlandish. It's baked into the model. But here's the problem. That argument is also the metaphysical equivalent of watching the universe freeze and calling it progress. It's like saying, since everything is trending toward uniformity, surely culture, consciousness, and political disagreement will too. One day, after sufficient entropic seasoning, communists and fascists will settle their differences over a shared spreadsheet. Which brings us to a very different kind of thinker, someone who knew that meaning doesn't converge by flattening difference, but by working through it. Let's bring Hegel into the room. Why Hegel? because among all the philosophers who respected human conflict, not just as a mess to be cleaned up, but as the engine of history and thought, Hegel stands apart. He didn't just acknowledge contradiction, he turned it into the motor of development. Hegel, philosopher of Geist, of dialectic, of the restless concept, believed that human reason unfolds not by compressing data, but by struggling with what resists it. He saw the Begriff, the concept, not as a label or static category, but as a living, self-mediating process where opposition isn't erased but reconciled. Yes, he spoke of an end, the absolute, where spirit comes to know itself, but don't confuse that with consensus by algorithm. As Charles Taylor put it, Hegel's vision isn't about eliminating difference, but sublating it, lifting contradiction to a level where it can be seen for what it is, and thus understood. Not debugged, not deleted, understood in its own necessity. Or, in Robert Pippin's terms, Hegel doesn't reduce rationality to formal rules or decision procedures. He shows that reason is historical, lived through practices, shaped by institutions, driven by struggle, and always in search of recognition. The word in German is Anerkennung. So if you think human-machine convergence is the new dialectic, think again. What's missing isn't processing power. What's missing is spirit, Geist, the historical, embodied, cultural being that lives and breathes contradiction. And here's something crucial, maybe the only thing that phenomenology in all its diversity agrees on. From Ricoeur to Merleau-Ponty, there's this one shared insight, that the world of lived meaning, of personal drama, of desire, of suffering, of the struggle to be loved, is not something you can reverse engineer. Not because it's irrational, but because it unfolds in time. Not the time of battery life or server uptime, but narrative time. Time is memory, story, interpretation, the kind of time that can't be parallel processed. The kind of time that makes us human. And no, spirit doesn't speak spreadsheet. So let's say it clearly. Hegel had the presence of mind and the presence of spirit to know that philosophy isn't about optimizing meaning. It's not about compression, it's not a better algorithm for agreement. And this becomes clear when we recognize what he saw as the highest form of self-consciousness, philosophy itself. Hegel believed that philosophy was more than an abstract model of knowledge, more than a mirror of science or a cultural appendix. For him, philosophy is the concrete form in which consciousness folds back on itself, attempting to grasp not just ideas, but the total movement of life in science, politics, art, and religion as it unfolds through contradiction. Philosophy arises when lived experience reaches a point of tension so intense that it demands reflection, not just from individuals, but from spirit itself, history becoming self-aware. In that sense, philosophy isn't separate from the world. It is the world thinking itself. It springs from the cracks, the fractures, the failed reconciliations, the unfinished arguments, and seeks not to erase contradiction, but to bring it to a level where it can be understood. Hegel imagined that all of this, the endless negotiations of science, culture, ethics, could be seen as steps toward a conscious unity, not a flattening consensus, but a reconciliation that preserves difference within a higher order. The absolute in this light is not a final answer, but the moment when human consciousness becomes fully aware of its own role in shaping truth. So when philosophy appears, it isn't late to the party, it is the party, arriving just as the lights start to flicker to say what it all meant.